It still was respectable ratings by the end, but that slide happens. And what that means is when you get to the end of your contract, do you keep the show going? Well, Discovery's not going to want to.
For years, Adam Savage was the face of curiosity, imagination, and explosive experiments. MythBusters wasn't just a show. It was a phenomenon, a place where science met spectacle, where every fan could feel the thrill of discovery. Millions tuned in weekly, cheering for the busts, the confirmations, and the daring stunts that tested the impossible. Yet behind the cameras, something darker was brewing, a reality that Adam rarely spoke about publicly. The cancellation of MythBusters shocked fans worldwide, leaving a void in science entertainment and a generation of viewers confused and disappointed. For nearly a decade, rumors swirled, declining ratings, network politics, creative differences, but no one had the full story. Until now. At 58, Adam Savage has broken his silence, finally revealing the truth behind the end of the show he helped build from the ground up. And what he disclosed is far from the polished, reassuring narrative fans were led to believe. The circumstances weren't just disappointing, they were troubling, even disheartening. It was a story of industry pressure, shifting priorities, and creative clashes that many feared to speak about publicly. Savage's confession uncovers what really happened behind the scenes, exposing decisions that shocked him, frustrated him, and ultimately ended one of the most beloved science programs of our time. And while the world saw stunts, explosions, and myth-busting fun, few understood the emotional and professional turmoil that accompanied every season, every episode, and every decision. What he shared goes beyond ratings or contracts. It's about control, trust, and the complex machinery of an entertainment industry that sometimes values spectacle over substance. Today, fans finally get to hear it in his own words. The reason MythBusters was canceled, and why it's worse than anyone imagined. From the outside, MythBusters looked like a dream job, a playground of science and chaos where curiosity reigned supreme, and explosions were part of the curriculum. For Adam Savage, it was more than a TV show. It was the culmination of everything he had ever loved: invention, experimentation, storytelling, and wonder. He and Jamie Hyneman were the odd couple of television, one brimming with expressive energy, the other stoic and methodical, but together they built something iconic. But as Adam now admits, behind the safety glasses and the steel frames of rocket sleds, the show had long been on a collision course with something far more dangerous than any myth they tested: network interference, internal friction, and a creeping loss of creative control. In recent interviews, Adam finally opened up about what really happened during those final years: the awkward silences during meetings, the producers who started prioritizing spectacle over science, and the growing tension between what the show was meant to be and what it was becoming. The audience never saw it, but behind the scenes, entire episodes were scrapped, scripts were rewritten by people who had never held a soldering iron, and executives began pushing for bigger explosions, faster cuts, and less talk. The science was getting squeezed out. Adam described it as a slow erosion of purpose, a feeling that what once felt organic and passionate had become a polished product stripped of soul. There were warnings, moments when he questioned whether they should push back or walk away, but the machine kept moving. Every new season came with more pressure, more demands, and less freedom. And while the ratings remained solid, the tone of the show was shifting. Even Jamie, who was known for his emotional restraint, grew visibly frustrated with how decisions were being made without consultation. Adam, on the other hand, tried to protect the creative core, advocating for balance, trying to preserve the show's identity, but it was like swimming upstream in a river that had changed course. Then came the moment they both feared, the announcement of the show's end, not delivered in a boardroom, but through a quiet, calculated decision that left the cast and crew stunned. Adam recalls finding out not from a direct conversation, but through a series of cryptic messages and vague production notes that suddenly stopped mentioning future seasons. It wasn't just cancellation, it was abandonment. No closure, no real explanation, just a subtle exit masked as a transition. And what stung the most was the silence. The show had brought science to millions, inspired classrooms, built careers. Yet, when it was over, the final goodbye felt cold and corporate. For Adam, it wasn't just the end of a job. It was the collapse of something sacred. And while he remained gracious in public, he now admits the truth behind those last few months was far more painful than anyone suspected. It wasn't just ratings or budgets. It was a quiet dismantling of a vision he and Jamie had fought to protect for over a decade. In the aftermath of the cancellation, Adam Savage found himself grappling with a hollow sense of disorientation, the kind that comes when something foundational is pulled out from under you without warning. He later admitted that the way MythBusters ended left more scars than he anticipated, not just on him, but on the entire team who had poured their hearts into every spark, crash, and failed experiment. There was no farewell meeting, no wrap party that celebrated the years of innovation and teamwork. Just silence. It wasn't until much later that Adam began to piece together the real reasons for the cancellation, and they had less to do with numbers and more to do with a quiet war behind the scenes. The network, according to Adam, had begun to shift its identity, craving louder programming with viral potential and simplified narratives. Complexity was no longer marketable. Nuance didn't sell ad space. The very thing that made MythBusters special, its dedication to deep dives, controlled variables, and scientific integrity, was now considered a liability in a climate obsessed with speed and spectacle. As Adam reflected, it became clear that MythBusters didn't just get canceled. It was systematically stripped of its soul until it no longer resembled the show he and Jamie had signed up to create. Budget constraints followed. New staff members were hired without the same passion for experimentation. And worse, the creative decisions were increasingly made by people who neither understood nor respected the ethos of the series. It stopped being a show about questions, Adam said, and started becoming a show about explosions. At that moment, he knew the countdown had already begun. And for those watching now, if you value stories that go deeper, voices that finally speak their truth, and documentaries that respect the people behind the curtain, take a second to like this video. Subscribe for more and leave a comment below. Your engagement helps ensure that stories like Adam's don't get buried beneath press releases and spin. Back on set, Adam had done his best to keep morale high. He built relationships with young crew members, mentored interns, and tried to inject humor into moments of frustration. But privately, he was watching something he loved unravel piece by piece. And then came the most heartbreaking realization. They had made science cool, but the industry didn't care. The executives didn't see the thousands of kids inspired to pursue engineering, or the teachers who used episodes in classrooms, or the letters they received from fans saying the show changed their lives. All they saw were metrics, focus groups, and trends. And when Adam was finally told that the next season would be their last, he felt like the wind had been knocked out of him. It wasn't just a cancellation, it was a betrayal of everything MythBusters stood for. And although he kept quiet for years, honoring NDAs and preserving the illusion for the fans, he now says that silence became a burden. Because the truth is, MythBusters didn't burn out. It was pushed aside, one decision at a time, by an industry that couldn't see the value of what it had until it was gone. As the dust settled and the stage lights dimmed for the final time, Adam Savage faced something he hadn't prepared for: life after MythBusters. For over a decade, the show had consumed his identity, his routine, his relationships, and his very sense of purpose. When it ended, the absence wasn't just professional, it was spiritual. In interviews long after the series wrapped, he admitted that the silence left behind was deafening. There were no more early morning call times, no brainstorms in cluttered workshops, no adrenaline from testing a high-speed myth with real danger at stake. But what lingered the longest wasn't the loss of the show. It was the unraveling of a friendship that had defined it. For years, Adam and Jamie Hyneman had been a study in contrasts, one energetic and expressive, the other reserved and calculated. On-screen, that tension translated into chemistry. Off-screen, it was more complicated. Adam later revealed that the two were never close friends in the traditional sense. They respected each other professionally, but their working relationship was often cold, at times even resentful. As creative differences piled up, and as the pressure from the network intensified, the already delicate bond between them began to fracture. During the final seasons, Adam described their dynamic as tense silence. They would show up, perform, and leave, rarely talking, rarely connecting, simply fulfilling the roles that had made them famous. And though there was no dramatic blow-up, no visible falling out, the distance grew with every episode. When the show ended, so did their communication. Adam admits now that he grieved that silence even more than the show's cancellation. It wasn't just the end of a partnership. It was the loss of a shared dream, a shared purpose, and the complicated, fragile understanding that had held it all together. Looking back, he recognizes the toll that years of creative tension took on both of them. The constant compromises, the battle for narrative control, the pressure to deliver, all while standing shoulder to shoulder but emotionally miles apart. Still, there's no bitterness in his voice when he talks about Jamie today. There's reflection, yes, regret even, but also a deep respect for what they built together. The heartbreak lies not in how it ended, but in how something so meaningful could fade so quietly. And beyond the relationship, Adam began to process the emotional and physical toll the show had taken on him. The injuries he never disclosed, the sleepless nights, the psychological fatigue from performing curiosity on command. There were times, he confessed, when he felt like a shell of himself, exhausted from pretending everything was fine for the sake of the cameras. Behind the goggles and the gadgets, he was just a man burning out slowly, unsure how to stop the machine. After the show's cancellation, he tried to reinvent himself. YouTube videos, maker events, public speaking. But the void left behind by MythBusters haunted him. Fans still approached him in airports and restaurants, saying how the show changed their lives, how it inspired them. He would smile, say thank you, but inside it hurt. Because while the legacy was intact, the story behind it remained buried. Until now, at 58 with time and space to reflect, Adam is no longer protecting the polished version. He's sharing the messy, complicated truth. And in doing so, he's finally reclaiming the part of himself that had long been overshadowed by explosions and entertainment. Years have passed since the final myth was tested. The final slow-motion replay aired, and the final explosion lit up the desert sky, but the questions never stopped. Why did MythBusters really end? Why did the people who built it say so little? And why did Adam Savage, the heart and voice of the show, stay silent for so long? In the quiet aftermath, Adam stepped away not just from the cameras, but from the myth of MythBusters itself. The world had fallen in love with what they saw. Two quirky geniuses breaking boundaries with duct tape and dynamite. But what they didn't see was the wear and tear, the emotional sacrifices made in the name of entertainment. Adam eventually admitted that part of his silence was self-protection. He needed time to heal, to reflect, and to understand what it all meant without the pressure of keeping up appearances. And in that silence, he began to uncover the deeper truth. MythBusters had never really belonged to him or Jamie. It had always belonged to the network, to the production companies, to the ever-changing executives who pulled strings from behind closed doors. He and Jamie were just the faces, the tools used to build a machine that was never entirely theirs. That realization was both liberating and devastating. For years, Adam had believed that passion could protect creativity, that science could outlast spectacle. But the truth, as he now tells it, is that television doesn't run on passion. It runs on profits. And once MythBusters stopped fitting the formula, it didn't matter how beloved it was. It was replaced, dismantled, and rebranded like any other show. But out of that disillusionment came something stronger: clarity. Adam now spends his time speaking to young creators, engineers, and dreamers, not about ratings or reality TV, but about resilience, about staying true to what you love, even when systems fail you. He tells them that MythBusters was both the greatest gift and the greatest heartbreak of his life, that he wouldn't change the journey, even though it nearly broke him. And that silence, while sometimes necessary, should never be permanent. In finally breaking his silence, Adam Savage hasn't just explained the end of MythBusters, he's rewritten its legacy. No longer just a show about blowing things up and proving myths wrong, it's now a cautionary tale about the cost of creativity in an industry that often forgets the people behind the product. But it's also a story of survival, of rising from burnout, and of reclaiming the truth. For Adam, the legacy of MythBusters lives on, not in the reruns, not in the merchandise, but in every mind it sparked. Every question it raised, and every kid who dared to build something because they saw him do it first. And maybe, just maybe, that's the myth he was always meant to bust. The myth that entertainment has to be empty, or that creators are disposable. Because the truth is, what Adam built mattered. And now finally we understand just how much it cost him to do it.